Fridays here on Facebook. Thank you immensely for being with us today. And hopefully this is a good conversation where we actually get introduced and maybe start off this very important and pivotal time, which is 60 days of activism against violence and women in South Africa. And today we've got a really, really, really important conversation packed for you. I am here as Oretu from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, and I've got Dr. Shahida Omar, who is the director of the Teddy Bear Foundation. Dr. Shahida Omar developed the professional standard offered by Teddy Bear Foundation. As an expert witness, she's often consulted for challenging and controversial cases for law enforcement agencies. Her work adds to the literature and greater understanding of child abuse. Dr. Shahida, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to get started just to open up this conversation, like I said, about abuse in South Africa, especially with children. And I think what we sort of focus on is that abuse is normally seen. It's quite it's optical. We can see it and it's physical. But what we're talking here is untying the end. Or uniting to end digital violence against women and girls. And the key word here is digital. So the first question I have for you is, what are some of the most concerning trends that you are seeing when it comes to children and digital violence?
So what we're seeing a lot is that a lot of children are engaging in harmful sexual behavior. So I want to break it down. We're talking about typical developmental behavior, harmful sexual behavior, and problematic behavior, and then harmful sexual behavior. So a lot of children are acting out on other children, out. So we're seeing sexually aggressive behavior. And in our work with young child sex offenders, a lot of them have indicated that their first exposure to sexualized behavior or sexualized victimization has been online, being exposed to pornography, child sexual abuse material. And I think that is something that has become a trend that the Teddy Bear Foundation has observed in their clinical work with children. And in a lot of the children, so your typical developmental behavior is something that you would expect, age appropriate. When children are sharing images, sharing pictures, using dirty words or sexualized words. But the problematic behavior is when they're bordering on risky behavior. And then with harmful sexual behavior is when they are acting out on other children, infringing on the rights of another child, violating, using cyberbullying, using online exploitation. So the online exploitation is they start off with sharing pictures of themselves. So very innocuous initially, not harmful, not invasive, and then it moves on to more intrusive, invasive images where they start sharing they start sharing their genital images and then expecting that in return. So the sexting that takes place. And when things do not go right for the initiator is not satisfied with the process or the progress of the relationship or the outcome of the relationship, there would be sextorting. So, the emotional blackmail or threatening to make it go viral, where the victim then has to cooperate. So those are the kind of trends that we are experiencing with the digital platforms. We're also seeing where private confidential information is put online and the person is not informed about it, which they call doxing. And then catfishing is where the person impersonates. So a sexual predator, pedophile, could be impersonating himself or herself as an age mate or using an avatar,
Mm.
and on WhatsApp's pretending to be somebody else. So there are different platforms where we are finding that many children are subjected to this kind of online exploitation.
Yeah. And thank you so much for opening and unpacking that, because I think these are things that parents might see but not are not able to sort of label or even understand what it is. But in opening up about it and even giving it labels, it makes it easier for parents and guardians to spot this sort of behavior and then start to address it. And so you spoke a lot about exposure, and I want to ask this question: how does exposure to all of these things that you've mentioned, to online harassment, sexual grooming, cyberbullying, affect a child's mental health and their development?
Very important. So, in our work with children, once again, we find that as we speak, with the advent of technology exponentially advancing,
Mm.
uh, we find that parents are not in a position to move at that pace and are not equipped adequately to discuss any form of sex and sexuality. It's always been a taboo subject. And in all our
Yeah.
research conducted, a lot of the children have indicated the paucity of sexual knowledge and a request of receiving that kind of information from their primary caregivers or their parents. And unfortunately, they've had to reach out or look out to the internet for information,
Mm.
and looking at sexual abuse material, pornography, getting information from their peers, and often it's exaggerated, it's exaggerated. There's an element of grandiosity, it's valorized, it's glamorized, and the pressure, the peer pressure on wanting to fit in with
Yeah.
the group, with their peers and their age mates. They find themselves going along to get along, and under the pressure, find themselves faced with unintended consequences.
Mm.
I can just give an example of a group of schoolboys who all between the ages of 15 and 16. And they victimized an 11-year-old, lifted him, pulled off his pants, one pulled off his shoes. And when they were questioned, it was an act of impulse, lack of impulse control. It wasn't premeditated or orchestrated behind
Mm.
closed doors. It was in an open playground. So I think that, this is the kind of risky behaviors we are seeing, because children wanting to fit in, and when they're exposed to these kind of things and they don't have answers to the questions, they're often faced with confusion. They don't have a platform, so they don't have permission to seek information or inputs or clarity, to say, I saw this, or I saw two people having sex,
Mm.
or I saw somebody masturbating, online. And unfortunately, this impacts on children, where because of the confusion, sometimes it lends itself to trauma. And what we find is a reenactment of what they've been exposed to. So exposure could contribute to victimization and to reenactment of the same behavior they have been exposed to.
Yeah, and again, I think that sort of now broadens our understanding of what children may be going through behind closed doors. And I think it's so important to know and understand, and to have the language and vocabulary to address these sort of things, and to sort of follow that. What signs should parents and caregivers be looking out for if a child or their child has suffered online abuse and is sitting in silence?
I think it's very important that children needs to look, our parents need to look out for their children, and should not be, uh, um, the right word to say is to be fooled by the fact that my child is not outdoors, my child is indoors, not on street
Mm.
corners, not in the shebeens or taverns, not in game parks. My child is sitting in his or her room. They're on the laptop or a device, so they're safe. And I think
Yeah.
that is a misperception parents need to be alerted to the fact that when a child sits with his devices or withdraws, you asked something important. We find that children who have been exposed to sexual abuse material or online exploitation, the digital exploitation, often withdraw. They isolate themselves, their behavior changes, they display an lack of interest in activities they previously enjoyed, loss of appetite, disturbed or disrupted sleeping patterns, and often you would find that children sometimes become very anxious and even depression. And we've seen cases of attempted suicide and completed suicide with online cyberbullying and online digital exploitation. So parents need to look at when they see a child suddenly displaying behaviors they haven't noticed before, noted before, and the child withdraws or isolates himself or herself. These are red flags. The child's
Yeah.
grades start plummeting at school. Child no longer interested in sports, no longer wanting to sit at the family table to eat or watch sports, etc. Those are all red flags that they need to explore and find out what's behind this behavior.
So I think what you're trying to highlight here is that parents and caregivers should really look at this with a magnifying glass and to look deeper than what we think we know, what they think
Even
they know.
children will sometimes display aggressive behavior,
Right.
outbursts, or even weep, sudden outbursts of crying. And those are all indicators that there's something wrong and that needs to
Yes.
be explored further.
And I think what's important as well is while children are growing up, these sort of things can be sort of related or identified as part of their personalities when in actual reality it's not. It's a sign that something is going on behind closed doors, and that's why parents need
Absolutely.
to open that
Indeed,
door.
behind a bad child or mad child, there's usually a sad child that needs intervention and is crying out for help.
Right. So then to follow this, how, and especially understanding what this online behavior looks like and what these interactions look like with people who are exploiting children, how do abusers exploit digital platforms to target young children, boys and girls? And what protective behaviors can children be taught to avoid this?
So we know that your pedophiles, your sexual predators, your child traffickers, they surf the net and they look out for children. They prey on children who are needy, but they lure them by using grooming, focusing a lot of attention on the child, giving this preferential, attention that children, if we look at any family and any average family, a healthy, functional family, no parent has the liberty or luxury of time to give attention 24/11. There are so many multiple responsibilities, employment, providing emotionally for the child, financially, economically, attending to the academic needs, transporting children. So all that drains the primary caregiver. And with the predator or the groomer, they start focusing so much on attention, asking the child about his or her interests. And when the child displays that or shares that, they start focusing on those interests and saying they share common interests and a lot of praise. It's misused love. It's not love, it's misused. It's definitely abuse, but the child doesn't understand that. So that's part of luring the attention of the child. And as I said earlier, the catfishing, impersonating as an age mate, sending photos of somebody that's beautiful or handsome and an age mate. So this child feels, oh, I'm special. This person is
Right.
attracted to me. And of course, the child slowly starts forming a relationship, a bond. And this is how they lure children eventually, setting up dates or meetings. And that's how children get trafficked as well. And children get involved in the dark web, underground drugging, etc.
Mhm. And I think so. What's important here is again for parents to use that magnifying glass to ensure that they are providing a holistic sort of understanding of what's going on in their child's life. Because with groomers, they can find a crack, they can find a loophole, and that's their way in. And once they've created that trusting relationship, it's quite difficult to shift that and to move that, especially with children who are quite vulnerable. And so, Dr. Shahida, just to wrap this conversation up, how can communities, schools, and parents work together to create safer digital environments for young children?
Very important question. And if we just look at the Inspire strategy, it's an acronym developed by the World Health Organization, Implementation and Enforcement of Laws. That's what I stands for. N is for
Mm,
norms. So ensuring that the standard norms. P is for parenting. So important here about schools taking some level of responsibility where parents are empowered, equipped on how to navigate the internet and become more aware of the risks, that there's definitely benefits being exposed to the internet, but the risk factors as well. So empowering parents to navigate that, I think, is important. And also ensuring that children, because I just gave you the three, but also
yeah.
empowering children about the risks and benefits of the internet, making them aware, sharing real lived narratives of other victims of abuse, so they realize that people they think they are they think they know that they are communicating with are not actually who they think those people are. So making them aware of that is very important. And by hearing other people's stories, certainly it becomes more authentic for a
Mm,
child, to prevent them from becoming a victim of abuse. So,
yeah.
I mean, one can continue, but there are many ways and different platforms where we need to engage children. And of course, parents need to have ground rules around the use of devices, but
Mm,
also ensuring that they have access to the fact of who their children are engaging with. It's
yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
And to remind children not to provide personal details to people
Of
they
course.
haven't actually met in person, not provide any family details, their schooling details, or any other personal information.
Yeah, and I think here we can go with the saying that it takes a village to raise a child, and I think communities as well need to be involved in this, in calling out such behavior on social media, and saying this is wrong, you're not supposed to be doing this, and even becoming whistleblowers to say I can get you arrested for this sort of behavior because you are endangering the livelihoods of children. So I think this is very important and a very important conversation to have during this time where it's 16 days of activism against child and women abuse. Dr. Shahida, I cannot thank you enough for making time to have us and to have this conversation with us. Thank you very, very, very much. And do you have any last words to sort of wrap the session up?
I think for me, the last word is communication is key.
Yeah.
It's important. We cannot say we're going to lock up the devices or throw devices away. It's a reality that we are going to have to
Mm,
live with. It's about empowering, informing our children, and at the same time, ensuring that there are rights and responsibilities to the use of devices.
yeah,
Thank you.
perfect. Nice way to wrap it up. Thank you so much to our viewers for being here today and for coming to this session. And I hope that you've learned something that you can share to others as well, and you can also start implementing in your own lives as well. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful afternoon.